Hello and welcome. And while we wait to start this program, we are going to enjoy some nice music.
It's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. I guess it took the black bottom saints to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't you get yourself a drink at the bar, raise a glass and let's celebrate the glory of the black bottom saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. In Black Camelot, the music was hot, and everyone knew everyone's name. There's simply no denying that the factory folk caused the revolution in their own special way. It's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. I guess it took the black bottom saints to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't you get yourself a drink at the bar, raise a glass and let's celebrate the glory of the black bottom saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. Oh, in Black Detroit, the girls and the boys were dancing with their own kind of flair. And Ziggy lit the fire with one hell of a show. The stars came out for a colossal affair. Oh, it's crazy to think I used to be in the dark. My history was all kind of vague. Well, I guess it took the black bottom saints, oh, to learn about the joy and the pain. So why don't we get ourselves a drink at the bar, raise a glass and just celebrate the glory of the black bottom saints. Oh, the stories of the black bottom saints. Oh, the glory of the black bottom saints. I hope that you'll remember their names. Oh. I said I hope that you remember their names.
That was excellent. This is officially my favorite song now.
We're one of the few novels in the world that has its own theme song. That's Louis York. They are Grammy nominated and winning duo called Kelly and Chuck Harmony. And I'm so thrilled that they decided to give Black Bottom Saints a theme song.
It's beautiful. I love the spirit of it. And I guess that is the spirit that you were talking about, that you've been talking about in your book. I think we will go back to no, we were in the
Yeah, cue up the museum when we don't start it, but we'll have that.
Well, we'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll start. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Rohini Gupta. I am the Adult Curriculum Specialist with the Howard County Library System. And we're looking forward, as you've heard by the song, we're looking forward to a fantastic and amazing evening with Alice Randall. And I will tell you more about her in a bit. But before that, this is a webinar. And so you are not visible, but you will only get to see the author speak. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. You're welcome to put them in the Q&A box. And after Alice's presentation, if you would like to say out your question, and if you ask me in the chat to unmute yourself or just say that you want to ask the question yourself, we are happy to do that. We are happy to hear from you. So, and in just a little bit, as people are signing in, I will quickly share the slide of our bookstore where you can go and purchase Black Bottom Saints or any other book that you would like to buy. They are our local bookstore and we are supporting them. We've had a close relationship with them and we are trying to support them here. Let me open out that slide. Our local bookstore is Books with a Past. You can get ebooks from them or you can get physical copies that they will be happy to ship with you. They also give you pre-curated packages, boxes of books that you can ask them to curate for you and they will ship it for you. And Lyndon, you have raised your hand. Did you have a question that I can help you with? Or if you want to put that in the chat. Hi, Lyndon, if you want to unmute yourself, did you have a question? No, okay. Or did you just happen to raise your hand? Okay. Okay, maybe it is just. Well, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Alice today. Alice is multi-talented. Not only is she a novelist, she is also a songwriter, and she has also written children's books, and she has won awards for all of them. Alice Randall is the Harvard-educated author of novels, including The Wind Done Gone, which I think is a take of Gone with the Wind, Pushkin and the Queen of Spades, Rebel Yell, and Ada's Rules. An award-winning songwriter, she co-wrote the #1 hit, Triple X's and Triple O's, or is it XXX and OOO?
X's and O's.
X's and O's, which celebrates Aretha Franklin. With her daughter, Caroline Randall Williams, she co-authored the acclaimed cookbook, Soul, Food, Love, which won the NAACP Image Award, and the young adult novel, The Diary of B.B. Bright, Possible Princess, which received the Phyllis Wheatley Award. Alice is a professor and writer in residence at Vanderbilt University, where she teaches courses on soul food, African American children's literature, and African American movies. A native of Detroit, she lives in is it much warmer in Nashville, Tennessee? I'm guessing it might be. Well, and now thank you very much for being here, Alice, and it's over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I love libraries. I did not start off reading in a library because I started off reading with my father reading newspapers to me, and one of the newspapers was the Michigan Chronicle, and one of the columnists in the Chronicle was Ziggy Johnson. And so I first fell in love with written language, hearing the language of one Ziggy Johnson, an entertainment and gossip columnist for the Michigan Chronicle. Ziggy was also the MC of the Flame Show Bar and also of the 20 Grand. And on top of that, he founded a dance school called the Ziggy Johnson School of the Theater that was really a citizenship school for girls and boys masquerading as a dance school. So Ziggy was an MC, he was the dean of a dancing school, but he was an entertainment columnist. And so he was the first writer I ever knew. And when people ask me the question, who inspired you to want to be a writer? The answer is Ziggy Johnson. And over the years, I've had people tell me a lot that I'm more resilient than most people. And I realize the answer to that is also Ziggy Johnson. So I'm 61 years old now. About 10 years ago, when I was 50, I thought, I want to tell the story of Ziggy and how he helped me become a person who got to hard-won happy. I wanted to tell the story of Ziggy because it was the story that no one would believe of a forgotten Black Camelot, the world into which I was born. When I was born in Detroit in 1959, I'm looking at this number, there were 122,808 Black girls in Detroit in 1960 when the census was done. And there were 525 Black women over the age of 85. 122,808 Black girls, and I was one of them. In some very significant ways, I feel I had 122,807 collaborators on this book, Black Bottom Saints, which is a celebration of Caramel Camelot, a shining hour of Black art, activism, athletics, and industry that was Black Detroit 1938 to 1968, when 80% of the Black people living in Detroit owned their own homes. When the Gotham Hotel stood in the middle of Black Bottom as what Langston Hughes called the #1 Black hotel in the world. This is the story of the world the breadwinners made. The breadwinners are the Black automobile and other factory workers who came often from the South to Detroit and worked in factories by day, but by night, and sometimes during the day, they were out hearing music in the show bars, the taverns, and blind pigs of Detroit. They were not just hearing music though. In the Gotham Hotel, they would be seeing amazing visual art, oil paintings by Artist Lane, one of my saints. They would be seeing sculptures. They would be seeing a great deal of early mid-century photography by African Americans. The Gotham Hotel had a famed Shutterbug Club that even Sammy Davis had a membership in the Gotham Hotel's Shutterbug Club. And the halls of the Gotham would be hung with Black photography, Black painting. So it wasn't, the breadwinners didn't just support the factories. They supported the visual arts, they supported the musical arts, but they also supported the literary arts. Robert Hayden, the first African-American poet laureate of the United States, was born in Black Bottom. His mother was a showgirl. That story of Robert Hayden isn't much told, but Robert Hayden would walk past his own bitterness to shine a light on Black Detroit in some of his most important poems. And in shining light on Black Detroit, he's going to shine a light into a universal soul. Because though this is a very and particularly Black story, like all great stories, it is truly human. We enter in through the specific lens of Black Detroit into some of the greatest wisdom human beings have of how to move from trauma to transcendence. One of the main themes of my novel, here it is, Black Bottom Saints, is joy is radical. Joy is radical. That is a primary theme of Black Bottom Saints. And that theme very much informs the structure of the novel. The novel addresses all 5 senses. It addresses sight, sound, taste, touch. It invites you to inhale, to see, to feel, to hear. Black artistic excellence, one of the ways, and invite joy in. One of the ways the novel incorporates all 5 senses is that each chapter ends with a libation. I'm going to lift my glass right here. Each chapter ends with a libation and with the cocktail that you are invited to make, some of which include alcohol, some of which do not. You are invited to inhale, to taste, to feel, to see. A celebration of an individual life. The Black Bottom Saints is a highly unusual novel, an experimental novel in its structure. Ziggy Johnson is the narrator, and he has writing in the last days of 1968, a Saints' Day book, a hagiography, in which he is going to give you the lives of his 61 saints in 52 weeks. People have asked me, why a hagiography? Why a Saints' Day book? I told you that it was 10 years ago I decided that I was going to write the story of Ziggy Johnson, this man who had a resiliency school for Black kids. But it was only 4 years ago, that I began, 4 years ago, the hard final writing. When I first conceived of this novel, it was a straight novel, a year in the life of Ziggy Johnson. But 4 years ago, we were entering into a very broken period in American life. It has become unimaginably broken in the time in which this book is published, in the present moment. And it occurred to me 4 years ago that we needed a book of virtues, that we needed to focus on virtue, and that Ziggy was all about looking past petty crimes and small failures to see deep virtue. And so the principle for inclusion in the novel, as I was telling Ziggy's story through the lives of his saints, the principle for inclusion in the novel was, did Ziggy love you? And that love being manifest by him putting you into the pages of one of his gossip columns in the Michigan Chronicle. So the first question was, did Ziggy mention your name in one of his columns in the Michigan Chronicle? The second is, were you deeply associated with Black Detroit? Had you yourself walked through the lobby of the Gotham Hotel? And the third question was, did Ziggy think you knew something extremely profound about moving from trauma to transcendence? And was that something that he had paraded in front of his students in his dancing school? If you had been in Ziggy's column, if you had been in the lobby of the Gotham Hotel, if you knew something very significant about moving from trauma to transcendence, you made the cut. To give you an overview of who Ziggy's saints are, I'd like to take you to something we're calling the Black Bottom Saints Virtual Museum. I hope that we can begin to get that ready. Let me tell you where you'll be able to find that. Only people who come to one of my virtual events is going to get a chance to know where the Black Bottom Saints Museum is hiding in cyberspace. You can go back and visit it for as long as you would like, but as long as it's in the place I'm telling you, which will be at least for the next week or two. It's at www.alicerandall.com. If you go there, if you then click on Press Kit, because it's hidden, So we're expecting not many people are looking for the press kit. And then you got to scroll all the way to the bottom of the press kit, past some addresses, email addresses that you may or might not need. And then you see some flashing cards that look a little like this. Double click on the flashing cards and you will enter, it'll probably take a minute or two to download it, the Black Bottom Saints Virtual Museum. This virtual museum is full of art by a renowned artist, Jimmy James Green. Jimmy James Green worked with me last summer to translate my novel into 53 collage portraits. These are full-size works in the original, very intricate collage portraits to give you a sense of the stature of Jimmy James Green. His art is in a subway station in Brooklyn, New York. The subway station at the Children's Hospital is filled with Jimmy James Green art. There's a Black Episcopal Church in New York City that has Jimmy James Green art as the stained glass windows. His art is the basis for their stained glass windows. He's a very important artist, but he has an interesting connection to Black Bottom. He apprenticed under a man called John Anye Lockhart, who was a famous portrait painter of Black Bottom and a person who actually created my portrait when I was 3 years old in Black Detroit. So the work you will be seeing is Jimmy James Green's. We're going to take a flashing 10-minute tour through the virtual museum as a way of taking you into the heart of my novel virtually. And with that, may we start the museum, please? And so here we are. There is Eartha Kitt, the hidden saint. When you get to one of the portraits, if you click on it, you'll get a quotation from that chapter and you'll find out who this is, the person is the patron saint of. Eartha Kitt is in this novel as an anti-war activist who is going to talk about the connection between kids being murdered in Vietnam and the rise of drug addiction in the urban core of Black Detroit. We're going to start off here with Robert Hayden, the Poet Laureate of the United States, as I said, who was at the University of Michigan at the end of his career, but spent 23 years at Fisk. He's one of Ziggy's very, very favorite saints. They have many things publicly and privately in common. To the left is Sadie Pryor, who I'm going to read you a little bit from her chapter. She was a librarian and Ziggy's aunt. Next to that, we see Dinah Washington in Night Train Lane, the famous Joe Louis. On the left is Thomas Bullock, who's very important because his libations are the basis for many of the libations in the novel. To the right there with the pink hat is Bricktop. We'll come back to her. Her drink is the 66 Rue Pigalle, but that is the, these are the saints of summer. Here we are, this is Tanya Blanding, the saddest saint in the novel. She is a saint of fall. Tanya Blanding is a 4-year-old girl who's shot down by Michigan state troopers in her home in the summer of 1967. She is the saint that makes Ziggy want to die because he never gets a chance to teach her. She is proof, like all the saints of fall, that structural racism can be so destructive that no amount of resilience can help them, a person move from trauma to transcendence if they get shot down in their home. Elsie Roxborough, who is an amazing playwright and producer. She produced Langston Hughes. She came in third in a competition with Arthur Miller. She will commit suicide after passing into the white world in New York City. But before she died, she lives producing Langston Hughes, and Langston, we think, had a picture of her on his desk when he died. These are the saints, these saints of fall are up against the most. Here we have Della Reese. She was a victim of domestic violence. Her drink is called The Last Lick. It has a red wine wash over brown liquor. in honor of all the women like Della who effectively ended their abuse and stood up with other women to help them end their abuse. Della Reese was far more than that woman headlining at the Flames Show bar. When she was a young woman, she was being recruited by both Spelman and Radcliffe. Her mother died, and she went into the entertainment world to support herself, but she was an activist for women's rights all of her life. Here, one of my very favorite saints, Laverne Baker. She began life as Little Miss Sharecropper because she wanted to sing in overalls and a straw hat to honor the ones left behind in Mississippi and Alabama. She will become the second woman to enter into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you probably have never heard her name. She would go all the way to the Philippines because white artists were stealing her sounds and making money. Here we have Lloyd George Richards, begins life in Detroit as a shoeshine boy who will become the dean of the Yale School of Drama. He will discover August Wilson. Before that, he will actually direct Raisin in the Sun on Broadway. The extraordinary Lloyd George Richards, shoeshine boy to Yale dean. Here we have Ruth Charlotte Ellis, very early GLGBTQ activist. She will actually start a program to support gay and lesbian youth in the 30s and 40s in Detroit. Billy Parker, one of those breadwinners. Those bars were not just bars, they are civic centers where politics and art and labor movements are engaged. Billy D. Parker, breadwinner, part of this amazing audience that is assembled in Black Detroit, where Black art aesthetics can be central, but everyone is welcome. We also have quite a number of doctors in Black Detroit. Bob Bennett is a very important one. Black Detroit will have per capita more Black-owned hospitals than any other city in the United States. Lucille Ellis is an administrator in the Catherine Dunham School, but she's an advocate for psychoanalysis among Black youth. Nellie Hill Trapp will appear in race movies and be a very interesting film star that's forgotten. Here we have one of those characters that celebrates John White. He ran the Gotham Hotel and owned the Gotham Hotel. It was a den of gambling, but it was also an art center. Ziggy is all about, as I said, looking past the petty crime to the significant virtue. Here at the far end, we have Shirley MacNeille, one of the most precious people in Ziggy's life, Shirley MacNeille, PhD. She is the woman who will bring transcendental meditation to the United States, period. She will bring meditation into Detroit public schools. She will study with Piaget, and she will write Ziggy's youth colossals that will be performed on Father's Day that will have so much in common with W.E.B. Du Bois's pageants. Alf Thomas, another important Black doctor. He owns his own island between Detroit and Canada. He will be on the board of Meharry when he dies. One of the sweetest saints, Ted Rhodes, golfer. When I talked about Detroit as an athletic center, you might be thinking of Joe Louis in the boxing, but Teddy Rhodes will make golfing a big part of Black Detroit. There is Ziggy Johnson himself. And there in the corner is me in my youth colossal cowgirl outfit, as interpreted by Jimmy James Green in this collage. So the saints of spring are the ones who get to thrive, pure thrive. Here, as I said, each chapter ends with a cocktail. If you come back to the virtual bar, you can click on one and get a recipe. This is the Dawn Comes Sweet, the libation for the feast day of Joe Louis. And if you click on another drink, here you're going to have the 66 Rue Pigalle libation for the Feast of Bricktop. 66 Rue Pigalle was the address of Bricktop's bar in Paris. She also, as I said, had bars in Mexico City and in Rome. And another drink we have here is the feast libation of the feast day of Ethel Waters, the Twice Told Tale, which is going to remind us that Ethel Waters, in fact, wrote her autobiography twice herself. And in the first one, she narrates her own mother's rape when that was not discussed. So here we have Ethel Waters is an actress, a singer, but she's writing her own autobiography. As I said, we have a map here of the galleries with a listing of all the saints. The saints of summer are the roots of the Black experience. The saints of fall are experience the greatest adversities and remind us that structural obstacles make it such that individual effort cannot overcome all obstacles. The saints of winter are the geniuses of Black grit. The saints of spring are the ones who just get to this miracle of thrive. Google Fiber was a sponsor that helped me create this to translate Jimmy James Green's 52 chapters into 53 collage portraits. And you can come back and look at who some of the other sponsors are, who the other people have come into, helping me present the visual translation of the Black Bottom Saints, which began as a novel and also is a virtual art exhibit. Centering you in the exhibit is a little bit of language. You can come back and click and discusses a little bit of the themes. And remember, if you click on any individual painting, you're going to get a specific quote from that chapter, and you're going to find out who that saint is a patron saint of. The curator is me, but the actual museum architect is a 14-year-old girl of color, Madeline Ewing. And we worked in conjunction with the Art Steps platform out of Athens, Greece to create this. And Daria Smith, a very young, brilliant museum designer at the Tennessee State Museum. Here we are virtually in the river in Black Bottom. This is the Black Bottom Saints Museum. I hope you come back and visit. A Ziggy Johnson joint 1-1 orchestra place was the address of the Gotham Hotel, which is why we decided to give that address to the virtual museum. So thank you for taking a quick tour of the Gotham Hotel with me. What I'd like to do is, in honor of us being at a library, I want to spend a little bit more time with Sadie Pryor. This is Sadie Pryor. She was Ziggy's aunt. And I'm going to read you a little bit. She is week 7 in the book. This is going to be very brief. In 1904, 5 years after Sadie Pryor was born, the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs was incorporated with Mary Church Terrell as its first president, and Mrs. Booker T. Washington and Harriet Tubman as early members. Club women, they have been dismissed as over-concerned with trivialities, including home economics and the respectability of the race. Colored girls saw the club women another way, as warrior women who fought the battle of making everyday and earnest Black living visible, as women working in the company of women, prizing the company of women, fighting Jim Crow with to-do list and club meetings. Club women were the DC mothers reminded colored girl most Detroit mothers. So we're gonna skip into it when Sadie Pryor, according to Ziggy is gonna tell it, comes up to visit him in Detroit in 1962. Then she came up to visit Detroit in 1962. She saw me in action, met some of my students. One night I took her to a bar where she had 3 cocktails and smoked a cigarette. I was stunned. This is Ziggy talking, remember? They don't see it. What? When they focus on our social climbing, they don't see the children we are lifting over the wall. Hard, hungry, and able children, prepared by us to make the Bible promise an earthly reality. The last shall be first, to the last being first. We clinked glasses and toasted to being complicit in each other's successful creation of cradles of sapient excellence. We were not coordinated, but we were complicit. That night was the first and only time we got drunk together. She on 3 glasses, me on 5. We saved the best toast for last. This book was born in the aftermath of that toast. Sadie took a second sip, looked at the crowd, which included Massey, Bodywork, Shirley, Maxine, and Scatterbrain, and said, "They are not your friends, nephew. They are your black-bottom saints. The way you talk about them inspires me to proceed." Christmas time 3 years ago, 1964. There was Sadie E. Pryor night in Pensacola. I should have been there, but I was working, and had I attended, she wouldn't have known what to do with me in one of my light-colored silk suits. She was president of the PTA. She was principal of Spencer Bibbs Elementary. She helped found a Black YWCA and the C.B. Nelson Daniels Chapter 172 of the Eastern Star, and was installed as a worthy matron. She was a national leader of Girl Scouts. If I sound proud, it is because I am, and because she always played humble. Sadie knew Black girls made miracles because she had been a Black girl making miracles. Every day in every club, she worked alongside Black women who had been, but not acknowledged as being, shamans. Some came from hoodoo, some from conjure, some from voodoo, but they stood on the shores of colored girl mystery, that shrouded territory where misery is converted to mystery and power. Mystery. Watching Sadie work with her clubwoman sisters to finally win in 1953 a beach that welcomed Black kids to swim, without also winning lifeguards that the white beaches had, started me on a road of discovery. Watching her continue to work against well-moneyed, elected, racist men, eager to invite Black bodies into danger, took me further down the discovery road as I heard about her grinding city commissioners down with silly questions, administrative technicalities, and treacle sweet pleasantness. She had mother wit. It took mother wit to finally get the lifeguards the colored kids needed and deserved. Girls and women will be increasingly the key to maintaining Black identity as we Black folk begin to enter new, predominantly white spaces with new difficulties and new dangers. Integration brought evil as well as good. Sadie saw this, told me over drinks at the Sir John Hotel. "We need the magic box of your dancing school to intensify their soul selves, their own inner magic box." She clutched the pearls at her neck when she said this next. A string of pearls can be a shield. A dance school can be a lifeboat. So much gets diluted when we enter white space. I want to read you one more little, even shorter passage about a woman, a Black woman in Detroit who was willing to enter into white space and make a difference. I want to read you a little bit from the chapter of the saint I think we all need now. I'm going to venture politically. Lynette Dobbins Taylor, patron saint of rescuers who refuse to be victims, ironic alliances, and also club women. The world knows Lynette Dobbins Taylor as Mrs. Hobart Taylor, the first Negro lady to dance with an American president at his inaugural ball. But before Lynette Dobbins Taylor was dancing with an American president, with the LBJ at his inaugural ball, she was in Alabama and she was 14 years old, and it was 1933. In July of 33, Lynette was 14 years old and in a month would be headed to college. She had raced through high school at the head of her class, and she would have a college degree and be teaching in a classroom of her own by the age of 20. But first there was a picnic by the lake. Lynette attended with her parents, 4 siblings, and friends and neighbors from both her worlds, coal and cotton and road, Alabama. I'm gonna stop here and tell you, coal and cotton, Alabama is the poor Black people who are working in the coal mines of Alabama and the cotton fields. And road, Alabama were all the teachers and preachers, people who worn graduation robes and were strewn out all across Alabama, trying to take care and sustain coal and cotton Alabama. Some had traveled 3 hours by car to get to the gathering, and some had walked from the colored section of one of the model villages developed near the coal camp. Let me go back a moment. July 4, 1933. In that year, cotton was selling for 6 cents a pound. In 1920, it had been selling for 42 cents a pound. The Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 was paying white farmers not to grow cotton. Black sharecroppers were not getting the government bailout, and they were not getting the work. They were particularly hard hit. Black coal miners, about half of all the coal miners in Alabama, were doing a little better if they could ignore headlines like Negro miner meets a horrible death, and miners entombed in mines near Tuscaloosa, no hope for buried men. And all the men working on a short night shift die in a mine at Moffett, and colored miner killed. It was reported that in 1933, no Alabama men died in the mines. They died in 32. They died in 34. What was the 4th of July to the Negro A.G. Dobbins, elementary school principal, Lynette Dobbins' father? It was the day he projected in a flash what would happen if he didn't go into the water. He saw 2 of his children drowning. He imagined dead bodies carried out of the water. He wasn't having it. When he ran into the water, that teacher who had never cursed was hollering, "Hell no." And when Lynette swung that stick, she was weeping and whispering, "No, Daddy, no." A.G. was happy to die. He had not married a fine woman to give her 5 children, then asked her to stand with him to bury 2. He wouldn't let his Louise lose a son and a daughter in a lake at a picnic on a pretty day. The 4th of July was the day the Negro A.G. Dobbins taught his daughter to do whatever she needed to do to survive. Her survival and her brother's survival were so essential that he was willing to buy it at the price of his life and the price of his daughter's innocence. People will say her father rescued her brother. She will let people say that. And when she is dancing with LBJ, she will be thinking of how far she and her little brother came from the waters of 7 Mile Lake, because her father made a sacrifice that brought them both seconds of crucial time. Time for her to think, time for her brother to spit and breathe. Sacrifice, that's what Lynette was thinking about on January 20th, 1965, when Lyndon Baines Johnson, the 36th President of the United States, dressed in white tie and tails, whirled her around the ballroom floor. That and this. Earlier in the day, some 200 colored people had been arrested in Selma when they tried to register to vote in the Dallas County Courthouse. As she moved around the dance floor, she feared she would get whiplash, but she kept on stepping. In Washington, Black power was on the rise. The Civil Rights Act had been signed. I predict it would be proved to be the death knell to Idlewild and to so much more, including many of our beloved historically Black colleges and universities. But we were ready to accept the loss to achieve the coming gains. Hobart was co-chairing the inauguration, another Black first. Rumor had it that more than 5,000 Sepians who had gone all the way with LBJ were striding into the nation's capital to celebrate the victory. Things were different in Alabama, which means things were different in Detroit. Lynette was thinking about how she would mobilize her robe and road and cotton and coal troops as she twirled through LBJ's inaugural ball. In January of 1965, it seemed that a phrase Hobart Taylor had coined, affirmative action, when he first went to Washington and started working for then Vice President Johnson down in old executive building hallway from Ophel Dukes, would become an affirmative reality under now President Johnson. In Detroit, we understand the phrase affirmative action a little different than they do in the rest of the world. In Detroit, it means take a step, don't step back, don't talk, don't wait, act. Knock your brother upside his head and drag him through the water, but save his life. Affirmative action is a life-saving dance. Lynette Dobbins was just 14 years old. She saw her father die and got over it. Affirmative action. I've got a schoolhouse of gals learning that Black girl dance. That's magic, Motown magic too. I like to think that the way Lynette Dobbins stood by LBJ and all the Black people who went all the way by LBJ, with LBJ and put him in the White House, has something to do with the way that Kamala Harris is standing by Joe Biden now and will make as much a difference. And I want us to think about Lynette Dobbins Taylor, one of the architects of the Go All the Way with LBJ movement. Her husband and she together were architects of affirmative action, and her name has been forgotten. But she is one of Ziggy's saints. And if she inspires you to support the Biden-Harris ticket right now, she may be the saint that is most important. A dance that changes things. But who remembers that Hobart Taylor, wealthy oil, Black oil guy from Texas, did so much to get Johnson in office that he let him co-chair, invited him to co-chair his inaugural ball. So much does get forgotten. This novel is an invitation for us to remember it. It's an invitation for us to seize on Black joy, to remember that love is the strut and hate is the stumble. To remember there once was a literal space called Black Bottom. And in that literal space, in the years 1938 to 1968, there was an expression of Black artistic, athletic, activist, and political excellence and industry. That there was a Black audience that reminded us that the Black artist discovers and rediscovers their ability to reimagine the self and community and passes on that ability to the people that receive it. So I would love to open this up to questions from the audience, if there are some now.
Thank you, Alice. That was really, really powerful. It was very moving. And if you have any questions for Alice, you can put them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand or you want to be unmuted, I'm happy to do that. To be painted, and your childhood experiences seem to have been very, very rich, although I know that's probably not the whole story. So could you tell us a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up in Detroit?
Well, my environment, I think it's akin to Zora Neale Hurston talks about her early childhood in these all Black communities in Florida, that my early days in Detroit were extremely culturally rich, and it was a resiliency school. I have said that I personally have experienced my own mother was a very abusive mother. So I have often been told, and I love my life. I have often been told that people who don't know that will say, you must not have ever had anything very difficult happen to you. Well, that's actually not true. I had a parent that put me in the hospital. I don't normally tell that story and haven't told that up until these days because I feel it's not really relevant to most people who have childhoods like that. But I began to wonder over the years when I turned about 50, why did I have such a different outcome? And I realized that my father and the Ziggy Johnson School of Theater, that Ziggy's had been a resiliency school, that Ziggy had told us stories of kids who'd been abused. Night Train Lane, one of the most important stories in the book. Night Train's mother and father wrap him up in newspaper and put him out in the literal alley in the trash. A woman called Ella Lane hears what she thinks is a cat that needs to be put out of her misery. And she bends down and she picks up a baby boy. She raises that baby boy as her own, gives him her last name. He becomes a high school football star, washes out of college in one semester, goes into the military, is really depressed, calling home when he can barely call home to his mama. And he takes that mother-made scrapbook of his high school feats that she had made, and he walks on to the NFL team in Los Angeles. And that very first year he plays, he put up interception numbers that still are records. He created records that existed today with so much more passing and so many more games. Because Night Train always thought about the mama who lifted him from the trash, not the mama who put him down. Ziggy told me those stories. He told us the stories that Eartha Kitt, the abuse that she had experienced at the hands of her family members. Told us stories of all kinds of trauma that people had passed to get to all kinds of transcendence. And those stories were breadcrumbs out for me. He taught me to find shelter in art, in music, in beauty, and most importantly, in my own imagination. He taught me not to let anyone, including even a parent, own you or define you, or let their worst day define your best day. And so I was able, I said, this is a book that took me 50 years of living and 10 years of writing other novels to write, because I didn't write this story until I understood that it wasn't my triumph, it was my good fortune to be born into a community that taught such vivid resilience. And I feel that we are in a time that the whole world is rising from a pandemic. So many women and girls and people, including men and boys, are subject to all kinds of complex abuse in the world, police brutality, and intimate violence from people that they should be able to trust most. And in Ziggy's school, in Ziggy's Lives of His Saints, we get wisdom, collective cultural wisdom about how to walk from trauma to transcendence, from then to now. My own daughter has written an article that has gotten to be very famous right now called My Body is a Monument, about, she starts off, I have rape-colored skin. My daughter wrote those words. The other side of that is that Black culture has wisdom about how to transcend from that. It does not minimize the harm does not make any apology. It does not call out evil, what is evil? But it does call in the truth. We can reimagine our own self into our own identities and self spaces, and will not be defined by those who try to objectify us.
And I think what you said is really, really important. And especially about how stories and people get forgotten if we don't talk about them, if we don't tell their story, it gets forgotten. Because the narrative is very, very important. And often, like we would say that words don't matter or something, but now we know that words are, really, really important.
I think here we have both the oral language is celebrated in this book and also written record, because Ziggy is a columnist, so he does write. If he had not written some things down and published, I wouldn't be able to tell this as completely, but oral history has also brings it to life, and memory. All of these things weave together. One of the things I'm excited about this book is that the form allows you, some people have compared it to the Canterbury Tales, which I love. Some people have compared it to Spoon River Anthology. I said I've compared it to Profiles in Courage, that it's all of these things and it's something different. But you can dip in. One of the radical things about the reading experience, if you want to hear about Black Hollywood, and you can read the Ethel Waters or the Nellie Hill Trap or the Eartha Kitt chapters. If you want more on the Club Women, go for Lynette Dobbins or Sadie Pryor. We have, Reverend Cook is really concerned with Black environmentalism. If you're a lawyer and want to see some of the entertainment law things, Robert Massey. I said we've got physicians, we've got pride. We have Martin Luther King in a way you've never seen him before, for good and for bad. I love the fact that you can dip in, everyone can find a saint that I think that will either uplift their spirits right now or give them a little bit of coaching of wisdom right now, and just escaping to this completely other world right now. Sometimes to get up and be the warrior you have to be tomorrow, you sometimes have to get out of the war today. So as I said, this book, actually reading it, I read a little bit of the darker passages. The aggregate experience of reading the book is like drinking a glass of champagne with Ziggy, I hope. And I think that is, as I said, I think that joy is radical is a very important theme. The idea that love is the strut and hate is the stumble. What I love about every one of Ziggy's saints, Ziggy and myself, I hope as a writer, is that I am ultimately writing from love, and writing necessary stories, necessarily because they are a kind of balm in Gilead. And I started off, my studies at Harvard were 17th century Puritan sermons. I am a nerdy intellectual girl. I was that one who read from one corner of the library just across the shelves, all the Brontes in order, down one line, then another, back and forth. Even to this day, in my preferred life, I read a book a day. I love going, nothing much as going to the library, going to the bookstore, come back with 16, and that hoping that will, and 16 books probably doesn't last me 14 days when I have the time. I love books. I love the joy of reading. I once upon a time escaped to Emily Bronte's Moors. I invite people who live far from the world of Black Detroit to take a vacation in the Gotham Hotel into Black Camelot, and I think they will find themselves, they rise from that, more imaginative, full of a kind of radical, hard-won, gritty joy, and having a little bit more swagger.
Thank you. I think our audience today is being a little shy. I don't know why. They normally are not. You mentioned that you've been reading a lot of books. So right now, just out of curiosity, so what is it that you're liking that you've read in the last few books? Something that you really liked?
I love Randall Keenan's new book of short stories. I think he's one of my favorite writers, and that is something I love very much. I love, there's a poet Nate Marshall from the Midwest. He has a new book called Finna that means a lot to me too. Those are two of the books that I have enjoyed most recently that I think are really stunning. And I also read a lot in other centuries, you know, that.
I like books with an interesting historical background or a different, you know, flavor to them. I like those too. And
I also love to read cookbooks as literature, which I do. So that's why this has a cocktail book cookbook thing. Two of my favorites of all time are Travel Notes of a Geechee Girl by Berta Mae Smart Grosvenor. I love Spoon Bread and Strawberry Wine by the Dardens. So one of the things I love to do with this book is by having the cocktail recipes is to shout out that cookbooks often include narrative, and that cocktails themselves can be taste, narratives, and metaphors, such as that drink the last lick.
And that's why when you said that your book has all of the senses in it, taste and sound, as we heard that, you know, great song at the beginning. And
also cocktail, you can shake it, the sound of it. We have Spotify playlists. Look up at Black Bottom Saints and from the websites. My two websites are www.alicevandal.com and Black Bottom Saints. We have curated Spotify playlists. We have short ones, 6 song ones, but we have gone to deep cuts of 150 songs from 38 to 68. I encourage you to listen to music, to shake up a cocktail. I think this is a really fun book for book clubs because also people can pick one chapter that everyone's reading. Often people are loving the Tanya Blanding chapter or the Sadie Pryor chapter. And then people can then dip in. So you have one thing everyone has actually read, and then you can talk about what else you read. And of course you can make the cocktails. I said we have some that don't have liquor in them. They're all fun and interesting. Spray some arpege perfume so that you have more of the scent of the Gotham. So we hope that you have a 5-sense address, even in your virtual Zooms.
Is the drink you were having from your book, or is it something different?
It's one of the secret drinks. This one is the caramel camelot, and that is, I have 2 that are not in the book. This one has no liquor in it. It is a peach, ginger, turmeric tea that is chilled and shaken with peach ginger ice cubes, and the rim has pepper, powdered ginger, and a tiny amount of raw sugar in it.
Wow, that looks.
And it's not even 14 calories, and it's good for you.
We have a question,
yes.
And Lauren would like to know, will any of the books that you have mentioned here be referenced somewhere after this webinar? You would have to email me those titles because I don't remember all of the 3 or 4 books that you mentioned. If you can email it to me, then I will be happy to put it in a follow-up email to all of the participants today.
Very happy to do that.
Linda says that she is a GDS parent. What that means?
I went to Georgetown Day School from 4th grade until I graduated in 12th grade. And it actually, Georgetown Day School appears in at least 2 of my novels. It might appear. It's in Pushkin and the Queen of Spades, and it is in Black Bottom Saints. I think it's called Pali Prep in my novels. The GDS is second to the Ziggy Johnson School of the Theater as my favorite art institution.
Well, if there are no more questions, then we will wrap up today evening. And I just love that song. I'm going to be just listening to it all the time. And
the Black Bottom Saints theme song, it should be available on Spotify. Louis York, I'm so thrilled. And I really hope that you all get the book, because I think novels, fiction has a lot to do with building the really effective anti-racist toolkit. That a lot of people are focusing on reading nonfiction, but there are a lot of studies that show that nonfiction actually tends to reinforce existing biases. And it's when we read fiction and enter into people's lives fully that we often shift our understanding and understand the humanity of others who are very different than ourselves.
Yes.
So I
I
really
do agree with
your,
that, because you get a deep sense of the person and their emotions in a fiction book, which is very important.
Well, I love that you have such a dynamic library. I adore libraries. I think that they are the foundation, an important foundation of our democracy, that the opportunity to have education, to have interaction, they are a public square that
Yes.
libraries, and they are actually, even more so than schools, in reality, the place where equalization is possible, because as long as you can come into a library, you have books, paper, and pencil, you can actually get some kind of profound education. And I always tell young people, and particularly young kids, and also particularly underprivileged kids, get a library card. A library card, with a library card, you have access to a library that most of the kings of Europe never had. That most of people, that literally, that the wealthiest people in the world for most of history never had access to as many books as one person, kid, with a library card today. They are the modern palaces. They are the great resources, and just even coming to these webinars, a person could get a superb education if they just actively engage their library. And I am some example of that. So I love libraries. They were my safest spaces with my crazy mother in Washington when I no longer was living in wonderful Detroit, but was attending GDS, which had a wonderful library. But the Tacoma Park, my branch library that was walking distance from my house for a lot of my life in Washington, was my safest, happiest space. And so I love libraries, and I'm so glad that even when your doors are not actually open, you are finding a way to reach into people's homes. So thank you so much, and take care.
So much. We do try to be, a free, open, non-judgmental, comfortable space for just anybody to come in with like a school, you have to study, you have to get grades. But when you come to a library, there are no expectations from you. And we just love having authors come in and talk. And your presentation was amazing. That the museum tour that you had, oh my God, those images are like out of this world.
I hope people go visit the museum on their own. It's just wonderful.
I will send out all those links. I will send out the links from your website, link to the recording, and also if you will send me the list of the books that you mentioned.
I will try.
If you remember them.
I remember them, but no, Randall, Keenan.
So then I can send those out to everybody today.
Nate, Marshall, vibration, cooking, spoon, bread, and strawberry wine. There. Love you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you.
We loved having you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.